Chapter 5.
Right, so I think the last of our top 5 problems, and we'll start to unify these, once we've completed this. And this is going to be the fun bit, is where do we put this all together with a patient, is osteoarthritis. So there can't be a single practitioner in this room that doesn't have patients complaining of osteoarthritis. And we know that osteoarthritis is basically told as wear and tear. So at this stage, we're not talking about osteoarthritis or arthritis as an inflammation. We're talking more arthrosis as a wear and tear problem. Arthritis is inflammation, would be things like rheumatoid arthritis, and they're a little different because you probably treat rheumatoid from time to time. Rheumatoid is a very inflammatory condition. What are the causes of inflammation again? Allergy, chemical toxicity, and infection. And most of them have got chronic infections. And where's the infection? Usually in the gut, isn't it? So how are we going to detect that and find out? That's what we do this afternoon when we do the meridians and things. So rheumatoid is a different problem. These people need, usually looking at their gut, they need good bacteria, they need to get rid of the bad bacteria, etc. But osteoarthritis, which is really osteoarthrosis, or wear and tear, means that the tissue is gradually beginning to degenerate. And it starts with the soft tissue. It starts with imbalances in the muscles. So there's an imbalance in the joint. They've done resections in animals where they've taken the tendon and resected it to a different position in the knee joint in animals, and the joint has worn out. They've degenerated, the arthritis has degenerated because the bones aren't sitting properly on the joint surfaces. Then they've resected back to the proper one, and the bone has grown again. The cartilage has regrown. So they know that cartilage is not irreversible. Okay. My ex-brother-in-law is an orthopedic surgeon, and he said, "You don't sell chondroitin sulfate, do you, Chris?" So I said, "No." Or glucosamine sulfate. He said, "It's a load of rubbish." He said, "Everybody knows that cartilage cannot regenerate." End of story. Okay, that's how an orthopedic surgeon saw it. But now, interestingly, more orthopedic surgeons saying, "Well, you're not quite ready for an operation. Why don't you try some glucosamine sulfate?" And I've tried this, and some people it works and some people it doesn't work. And those who it works, the question is it the glucosamine or is it the sulfate? Some people it's one or the other, and sometimes it doesn't work on either. So we want to look at it. But they do all start with an imbalance in the mechanics. Okay? And this is why people often get it on one side, long before they get another. I had a patient the other week, they were 50 and they'd had a hip done already. That was early. I know people can have them even earlier than that, but there was no history here of an injury or a congenital problem. They'd had a new hip by 50. That's a bit early. So the question is why? And very specifically, as we'll see this afternoon, there are muscles which can become weak in the body neurologically, nothing to do with the hip area, but to do with something neurological or emotional, very specific muscles. And if those muscles, key postural muscles, go weak, it causes imbalance. And Dr. Goodhart was fantastic to be, probably the first person to actually recognize this within body patterns. When he studied manual muscle testing, he noticed that there was a relationship between specific muscle weaknesses and specific spinal areas and other factors of the intervertebral frame, and like the lymph system, and their association to specific organs and meridians. So by looking at the meridian, we should be able to identify the muscle. So we will find there's a key muscle or key muscles. Now, we talked about the heart meridian and the heart itself with the subscapularis. Some meridians and systems have 10 muscles associated with them. So we've got to learn our muscles a little bit to be accurate to be able to do this. But if a person has a key problem, now say for instance there was a weakness of subscapularis. Subscapularis is associated with the rotator cuff, which are muscles which tendons blend with the fibrous capsule and add strength to it. So this person could have a rotator cuff problem which doesn't heal because they've got a neurologically weak subscapularis. And it doesn't matter how much you exercise, it won't get strong, okay, because it's switched off up here somewhere. He may not have a problem, but if he plays cricket, bowls, and it suddenly goes, twang, he can be in trouble. One of the doctors who gave a talk in Russia at their conference last week specialised in treating Thai boxers. Thai boxing is a big craze in Russia now, you know, with feet kicking and arms. And so he has to go to these matches and he actually muscle tests the people while they're doing the boxing, you know, and practicing that, and he gets them to climb up walls. This is another one, is vertical wall climbing, and it's a classic sort of cross pattern, and he goes through all the muscles with the person in the cross pattern there. And if he detects out a weakness there, you know, they could fall off the wall, because there's no safety nets or anything in Russia. Okay, so they can have severe problems. So the point is, if you can find where these key bits are, you may stop, you know, major imbalances in the hip or in any other joint. So if you've got, say, a weak psoas muscle because you've got a kidney meridian problem, you're going to have an imbalance in being able to flex and lift your leg up, which will lead towards abnormal position of the ball in the socket, which will lead to wear and tear. So it starts with the muscles, then it affects the ligaments, which are the tissue which control the range of movement of a joint. The muscles actually move the joint, but the ligament controls the range, so they allow a certain length distance to go there. Okay? And both these tissues are very rich in collagen and elastin. These make up the connective tissue in the body, is largely collagen and elastin, which gives the recoil. So collagen is key to all joints, and the particular type of collagen, as we see, is 1 and 3. Elastin. And then we've got the lubrication of the joint, the synovial fluid. So if you lose your synovial fluid, or you lose the lubrication, you begin to get friction build up, and then that friction, as we know, will cause wear and tear. Okay? So in other words, you're more likely to break your bicycle chain if you're getting rusty. So if it's drying out and you haven't put any oil on it, that eventually that chain will snap. And that's the same with the human joints if you don't lubricate them. And the point is, what is that lubrication? And we used to think it was oil, and there may be an element of truth as we're seeing that. And there was a great craze in the 1970s for taking cod liver oil to lubricate your joints. A chap called D.D. Alexander wrote a book, and everybody was taking cod liver oil. And some people said, oh, it's not the cod liver oil, it's the omega-3 oils in there that are anti-inflammatory and helping your joint. But it may be that there are fatty acids which we'll see actually are present in synovial fluid. And the deficiency of these essential fatty acids for that person can decrease the synovial fluid content and dry it out, and that will lead to wear and tear. And lastly, you've got your cartilage itself, your hyaline cartilage there, which can be eroded by not being remanufactured at the rate that it should do, and also from erosion from the build-up of like sandy bits, stones in the joint. So those are the major reasons. Now we know that steroid hormones, both gonadal and adrenal, have particular functions on all these tissues. So we know that fat is regulated by the body, not made, but it's regulated by the estrogens. So the estrogens have different depositions of fat in the body. We know that muscle, and this is most important, muscles are regulated by testosterone. We know that's why the weightlifters, you know, sometimes illegally take anabolic steroids, which are more male type hormones. Okay, so weakness occurs with lack of testosterone. So this weakness may be in different locations. It could be around the joints, and it could be the heart. You know, they now know that a lot of heart problems are related to low levels of testosterone in both males and females. One of the interesting ones we're sort of discovering is eyes are the same. An inability to contract the visual muscles to be able to see is often a sign of lowering testosterone, okay, because it's a muscle that operates the eyes. So if your muscles are weak, then you'll tend to get visual problems, and that may be a sign of low testosterone. Cartilage is stimulated probably more, again, androgens like androstenedione and androstenediol. Bone definitely seems to have a link with DHEA. DHEA seems to stimulate osteoactivity. Ligaments are definitely regulated by aldosterone, and this is a mineralocorticoid, and elastin is much more by progesterone. So progesterone, we know that with low levels of progesterone you lose the elasticity of people. That's why postmenopausally the skin loses its elasticity if it goes too low. Okay? So these are all adrenal and gonadal. Now when the adrenals get knackered in a green person, okay? They'll call upon their gonads. And the gonads, interesting, can produce all these hormones, but not in the same proportions. Obviously, the adrenals produce most of the aldosterone, but the gonads can do it sometimes, okay, if the adrenals really aren't working well enough. And in the same way, if you knacker out your adrenals and your testosterone is low, you'll call upon your testicular to produce more testosterone. Okay, so they can back each other up, but one will offload the work onto the other one. But obviously the adrenal cortex produces higher amounts of certain hormones than the gonadal, but they can help each other out. So this is why sometimes adrenal cortical problems can manifest as gonadal and vice versa, because they produce identical hormones there. So the extracellular matrix is mostly collagen. 90% of connective tissue is collagen. And the rest, as far as we're concerned here, really at the moment that we want to look at is elastin. And there are fibrin, fibronectin and laminin. But the most important is collagen and elastin. So collagen is divided into 5 types. And these locate in different areas of the body. And the most important was a collagen type 1, which is skin. And you'll see that most of these are in the skin, which is why the skin tug test is important. Blood vessels. So this is important, obviously, for strokes and things. Cornea, bone, ligaments, tendons. These are thick fibers. Collagen type 2 is in the cartilage. So this would be more the one with perhaps osteoarthritis. It's in the discs. It's in the vitreous humor. Vitreous humor. That's people with collagen problems is when the vitreous humor detaches. Okay, you come across people who have this detached retinas and detached vitreous. This is a collagen problem. Okay, so you need to treat them. Twang the skin, and you'll be twanging their eyeball. Okay. So type 3 is extensible connective tissue, such as skin, lungs, and the vascular system. We forget, again, the lungs are all elastic and are full of collagen. And type 4 is the basement membrane. So collagen is made of chains of glycine, and XX, glycine, XY, and so on, long chains. And they're all, third one is always glycine, and they're often accompanied by lysine or proline as the other amino acids. So X might be proline and Y might be lysine, or the hydroxylated derivatives, which is hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine. Now this conversion of proline and lysine to the hydroxylated version is, in all the books, is vitamin C dependent. So hydroxylation usually requires oxygen, iron to do the hydroxylation, obviously water, and vitamin C. Okay? And it was that Linus Pauling won his Nobel Prize for, was the role of vitamin C in the structure of collagen. Okay? Now, hydroxy gives this sort of elasticity to the collagen. And if you can't hydroxylate proline and lysine, you get basically adhesions formed. Okay, so this is the person who gets adhesions. Okay, now you don't know that you're going to get an adhesion until you've had an elective surgery and whether it's going to recover or not. Okay, so in order to avoid an adhesion, the one thing people say when they're having an elective surgery that I always say above anything else is take vitamin C. Okay, just not only is it help you for the inflammation and things after it, but it will help you with the recovery, the remodeling of the tissue with the collagen. Because if you don't put the hydroxyproline and the hydroxylysine, it's stiff, in other words, it's tighter. So vitamin C is really, really critical here. Now these are all formed by the stimulation of the ribosomes for the coding that we'll see for DNA. So there's a program in there from the nucleus, which then goes to transcribe to RNA into the ribosome, or the protein building part, where we start to construct protein. And in order to get this information to start with the program, as we'll see, the DNA polymerase is zinc dependent. So zinc is the basis of all tissue healing, first of all. Then we need vitamin C, bit of iron, which most people are not deficient in. Down here, when we glycosylate, we may need vitamin A. That's one of the places, vitamin A, and we may need some manganese. This is what Dr. Goodhart found 50 years ago now, is that manganese was necessary for disc problems, intervertebral disc problems, but he sort of said for wobbly teeth, because wobbly teeth is lack of ligaments. And we now know that wobbly teeth is also vitamin C deficiency because of lack of collagen. So vitamin C, wobbly teeth, vitamin C, and manganese. Now, that collagen, these triple helix pro-collagen, which is then transferred to the Golgi apparatus, is then squeezed out of the cell membranes into the tissue where it needs to bind to actually glow. And it's a little bit apparently like a conjurer's wand. It has a cap on the end and a cap on the other end, okay? And when it's in location and it forms a sort of row there, the caps are taken off, and these caps are sticky. So it's like a sticky plaster. Once it's on there, that's it. It'll stay in that position. And to remove those caps, you need an enzyme which is called lysyl oxidase. Okay, this is the final bit. When we lay the collagen down, lysyl oxidase is released and removes the caps. That's putting it sort of very simply. And that enzyme, lysyl oxidase, is copper dependent. So this is one of the areas in the body where copper is needed. But look who else is there. P5P. Okay. P5P or B6 is one of the most important nutrients as far as collagen is concerned. So this is where people who are P5P deficient or B6 deficient, why their collagen, the final part of the collagen isn't laid down properly, and why the blood vessel bursts. Okay? So vitamin B6 for red people especially, but for almost everybody who's got collagen problems, this is where the role of the B6 is right at the end there in the strength of the collagen itself. So sustained skin tug is a good way of doing it. So you hold the skin, hold it, tug it, and test strong indicator muscle. Muscle goes weak. If you've got the types of collagen from test kits, they're available, collagen type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but you don't really need that. You know, it's academic. You know, to a Virgo, it's nice to analyse exactly which type of collagen it is, but for the rest of us, as long as the skin tug test is there, and then challenge them in the order that we make collagen. Zinc, okay, number 1. I haven't met really a person, a body type over the age of 30 who doesn't strengthen to zinc. Okay. I will almost guarantee you every single person in this room will strengthen to zinc. Because there's none in the vegetables anymore. Okay? Unless you eat seafood, you know, by the ton, you're not going to get it from the soil. Okay? It's just impossible to get enough zinc almost. So every single person will strengthen it. Some, you know, can taste the zinc taste solution. Some, you know, 2/3 of you probably won't. But even those who taste it, you can say that they got enough zinc on the tongue, but that's all. Doesn't mean they got enough zinc in the middle of their brain or the end of their big toe. All right? If they muscle test the zinc and they strengthen to it, they need it. Okay? And I will guarantee you all 3 body types show consistently to 2 substances. There's 2 substances which are universally deficient in everybody in this country. Now, interestingly, in Russia, zinc was not top of that list. I was very, you know, top of the list were things like calcium and magnesium, you know, sort of, you know, really, really deficient. But zinc was much further down, they found. But then again, when I said, where were the tests done? And she said, oh, locally, here, in this area, which was a more rural area. Had they done those same tests on the people who lived in Moscow, it might have been different, because Moscow's a town. So environmentally, you may find country to country, location to location, slight variations. But I haven't yet found anybody who doesn't strengthen to zinc. I'll tell you what the other one is as we go along. Okay, iron. There are a few people who need iron. Iron is put into so many foods and fortified into it. We don't really get iron deficient, but occasionally you do. You've got your chronic patient who's, you know, tired. You've tried all the magnesiums, everything else. And very specifically, you know, like zinc, it's usually one type, one particular type of zinc, one particular type of iron, which will strengthen. It's not all iron. And it's iron sulfate, iron picolinate, iron citrate is not usually very good. Okay, we all have patients who've had ferrous sulfate and it upsets their tummies, and it's not, you know, the best. Vitamin C, as I said, this time of the year probably not many people show the vitamin C. You may get the odd person, but later on in the winter. Manganese, there's a few times you get manganese to show up. There's particular body types, as we see, that do show. A, hardly ever. Sulfur, sometimes. Copper, very occasionally. Now, very important here, silica. For us, I find a lot of people are silica deficient. In Russia, obviously, it's very high for some reason. But over here, silica is one of the most common minerals, although it's not technically a metal mineral, it's a mineral, deficiency. And they always talk about hair, skin, nails. So if you have a look at your nails, and be really honest about looking at your nails. It might be better to look at the other person next to you's nails, then you can be honest. So assuming there's no nail varnish on there, are there any ridges? Are there any vertical ridges, horizontal ridges, indentations in them? Are there any white spots? Do they flake? Do they split a lot? These are sort of questions or observations that you can make. And these are all stories, because nails are a result of the minerals in the body, and they are a rich source of B6. So when you have B6, they tend to split, they flake. So this is a sign of that. Now, I haven't found anything consistent with zinc. Zinc will show up as problems in there, but some people say, oh, it's horizontal lines. Some people say it's vertical lines. I haven't found, some people say it's white spots. Some people say white spots is calcium. You know, some people say all sorts of things, don't they? Some people say put hot pack on your bad back. Some people say put a cold pack on. Which do you do? So, do you have a tranquilizer or do you have an antidepressant? You know. So when you look at the person's nails, you're really looking at their minerals. So it's a very good place to look. So silica is one of those, definitely. Zinc, iron, B6, they all produce symptoms of problems with the nails. But I'm not going to go along and say, vertical ridges, that's always one thing, horizontal. But it does mean there's an imbalance in the minerals. So you will see silica. Silica comes up a lot. And it's very important, again, collagen, very important for scarring, for scar tissue. So if you want to avoid scar tissue, then take silica. So now we certainly take vitamin C and silica. And rub silica on. You can take it as a liquid, and you can also rub it on as a cream to prevent scarring. So very, very good. Even long time after the scar has formed, you might want to do that. Vitamin E is excellent to avoid keloid scar when it becomes very proud on the surface. Again, you won't know whether you're going to keloid until you've had your scar and it doesn't repair properly. So vitamin E rubbed into the scar, excellent for that. And green tea. Now we do a green tea cream. Green tea is very good against scarring and also against adhesions. So you can drink plenty of green tea. Don't put your vitamin C in the hot drink tea. But you can put your tinctures in, you can put your silica in. Okay, green tea. So green tea cream can be used on adhesions and scarring. Very, very good. We do it as a day cream because green tea is a very, very powerful antioxidant and helps prevent against the oxidizing effects of sunlight. So as a day cream, green tea, we call it a day cream, don't we? Yeah, it's actually got green tea extract, or very finely ground green tea. Sounds like tea time, doesn't it? Cream tea. Okay, so just to finish off more or less on these, and then it's looking like lunchtime. Elastin. Elastin is the opposite. Can I just borrow you again? Elastin, you do the twang test, as we call it. So collagen, you do the sustained tug, whereas on collagen, what we're going to collagen is sustained, and elastin, we let it go. And here we see, when you tug it, you tug it. Tugging is okay.
Oh, tug.
Yeah, you tug,
Yeah.
pull, it's okay. Now let it go. Okay, so tug it and let it go. That's it. Tug it and let it go. So we're looking for the twang. And you can see it really when you look at, to do it on yourself, tug your skin on the back of your hand, see how far it comes up. Somebody with weak collagen, it'll come right up. Okay, and then let it go and see how does it react. Does it go ding, straight down, or does it take a couple of minutes? And you can do that twang test anywhere. Usually the back of the hand is very convenient. Skin's a bit looser there, but just do it on the face. Pull. Nothing there. Okay, off you go. Okay, so elastin, remember, is modulated by progesterone. Okay, so when we look at elastin, we say, oh, it's made of certain amino acids. Copper needs zinc. Now, most importantly, is what makes progesterone, because this is really how you build your thing up, is to build the hormones up that regulate the production of elastin. And this is where our friends come in of B6, zinc, and B3. These are all convert pregnenolone in the steroid hormones into progesterone. Anthocyanidins are very important here. These are substances which are like blueberries, our coloured berries, are very good at stimulating elastin. They make us nice and soft meat. You know sometimes you massage a person's back and it's all tight, absolutely rigid. Put them on some berries for a few weeks and they'll soften up. It's a meat tenderizer. They get much more as they should do. And progesterone, as we said, if a person really extreme needs progesterone, it may be that a course of wild yam cream might be important there. I've got a few pots of that. So lastly second last on the joints is hyaluronic acid. This is the substance that forms the synovial fluid. It consists of combinations of glucuronic acid and N-acetylglucosamine, which are both saccharides. It is rich in synovial fluid, cartilage, loose connective tissue, and the vitreous body of the eye. Okay, this is really important. We won't go through how much you need. The role of lubricin. Synovial fluid also contains lubricin, which is secreted by synovial cells. It's responsible for the lubrication of the joints. The role of lubricin is not to reduce friction, but rather to protect sliding surfaces from wear. So this is rather important. The three constituents of joint fluid is lubricin, hyaluronic acid, and lipids. Lipids. Maybe D.D. Alexander was right. Lipids are important. And most of that is phosphatidylcholine. Now, so phosphatidylcholine, so we need choline. So choline is an important vitamin B, and we'll see that two body types need choline in every case. The phosphatidyl bit is the phosphate group plus the two fatty acids. So maybe fatty acids do have a role, and that the right fatty acids will actually help somebody who's got a dry joint. Okay? So again, that brings you back, what is the fatty acids for you? What is the fatty acids that are good for you and for you and for you? And interestingly, it's the same ones for all red people, it's the same ones for all green people, and it's the same ones for all blue. They're different, but it's the same ones. Every single red person will strengthen to specific fatty acids. So we'll tell you what those are a little later. So it may be that there is a role for oils within dry joints, literally. Hyaluronic acid is now being used a lot as a, what's it used for, Joe? Is it an emulsifier? No, it's not an emulsifier, is it? It's a moisturizer, that's the word, yeah. So it's a moisturizer. So we now put it into the skin creams, and it seems to be, it's a different texture, isn't it? It plumps the skin up. It's a lovely substance, really. It used to be from cockerels' manes on their head. That's where they used to get it from. But now they get it from sweet potatoes. So they found plant sources, which is always nice. I like to extract things from plants, like the oils, rather than from animals. Okay, so therapy localizes the joint. If positive, if the joint therapy localizes, if positive, challenge against synovial fluid, which is a test marker, hyaluronic acid, and then test against things that make hyaluronic acid. You might slap a sweet potato around there and see what happens. Okay, somebody must have discovered it was rich in sweet potatoes. But you can use any of the moisturizing creams that contain hyaluronic acid. I think we put that in the day cream as well, isn't it? As well as the nighttime one-to-one. Okay, so there we are. So strengthen against plant oils. So lastly here, as far as causing destruction to human joints, are crystals. Now, I can remember my grandparents complainers. You know, they got arthritis. They got crystals in the joints. You know, that's what they used to say. And I went to college and learned all about arthritis and so on. And so this is just rubbish when old people say they got crystals. But it is true. Some people, they creak when you move it, which is clearly the joint is dry. Now, some people are very wobbly when you move the joint. You've got a knee, you're moving the knee, and boy, it goes like this sideways. You know, the amount of mobility in there is phenomenal. It's hypermobile. It's very weak. The ligaments are not holding the joint. And this is a sign of elastin and collagen weakness. Okay? When a muscle is weak, we know that's the sort of starting of the problem. But when the whole collagen is weak, the joint is just so unstable. You know, those of you who don't do so much manual medicine may not be aware, but Brian, you treat knees, don't you? But you know sometimes you move a knee like that and you just go woo, woo, and you don't know how it stays in place even, you know, and suddenly it'll go crunch. And then that's the collagen elastin type one, okay? And then you get the dry joint, okay, and that's the one which is just has that dry feeling to it. And then you get the one where you've got to, when you compress it together or wait and you do this, it's called the grind test. And when they go weak to that, you know there's wear in the cartilage, okay? So sometimes you hear literally a grating, like sandpaper, isn't it? You actually rub it and you think, I wonder what the difference between that and the dry joint is. And it feels as if, you know, there's sand, like two pieces of sandpaper rubbing together. And these are crystals, and they've identified them. They sometimes remove them under microsurgery. And these crystals can be formed from cholesterol. So they could be cholesterol type ones. Probably you would have picked cholesterol. Cholesterol makes stones in the gallbladder. If you don't keep cholesterol convert it into bile, you don't do that conjugation with taurine and things, cholesterol can build up and create stones. And that same stones can also create kidney stones, and it can create stones, little bits in joints. Urates are a result, of course, of high uric acid there, but the most common is calcium. And the type of calcium that you find that calcifies tendons and joints in the synovium is calcium pyrophosphate. Again, any of these or all of these are available as test substances if you don't already have them. Hydroxyapatite, this is a particularly insoluble form of calcium which makes the enamel of our teeth. Okay, so it's really, really insoluble. Corticosteroid crystals and calcium oxalate. Oxalates come from various types of foods and have been implicated in a number of problems, maybe joints, calcium oxalate. But certainly oxalates are implicated in interstitial cystitis, which may in fact be like little stones or gravels in the bladder itself. I noticed somebody on one of the websites, Facebook, was asking that very question, any advice from anybody as far as interstitial cystitis. Interstitial cystitis, check them with oxalic acid or calcium oxalate, and you'll find it's certain foods that they're eating which are generating high levels of oxalic acid. So that's the manufacturing of the cartilage, which comes from glucose. So this pathway here we convert to fructose 6-phosphate and then down to glucosamine and acetylglucosamine. And we can see here we need a number of our friends like acetyl-CoA, magnesium. All joints to make a cartilage need magnesium. Magnesium is a big, big element in the wear and tear of the cartilage itself. So if you've got a positive grind test, you know, if I only have one thing to suggest to a person with that is magnesium. And you can get amazing results by just getting the magnesium balance back up. And finally, and this is most important, is the glucosamine may help the person, the sulfate may help other people, and we'll see that the end product of making the cartilage is chondroitin sulfate. So we've been looking here how to make the chondroitin part, but how do we make the sulfate? And the sulfate comes from the sulfur amino acids, and we looked at methionine, that's a sulfur amino acid, which goes down to make cysteine, okay? And cysteine will then go on and be broken down. Here's we've got cysteine to sulfite, cysteine sulfite. Sulfite is SO3, okay? So cysteine will break down by sulfation to sulfite. And sulfite will then be oxidized to sulfate, SO4. And this enzyme that does that is called sulfite oxidase. Okay? Sulfate. Okay, so what? Now, sulfites are real horrendous chemicals for certain people, and they give them one hell of a headache. Okay? They may make them feel pretty lousy all over, but it's usually accompanied by a headache. And you know this when you drunk sulfites in your wine or beer. Okay? You can go out and drink as much gin, whiskey, any other spirit, vodka, okay? No problems, okay? Wake up next day crystal clear. If you drink wine and you wake up all muzzy, it's sulfites. Now, sulfites are naturally present in grapes. So there's no escaping, no wine is sulfite free. But they add sulfite, as your sodium metabisulfate, to kill yeast, to stop it fermenting. So wines which are going to travel, usually have sulfites put into them. Okay, it's made by sulfate. Wines that don't travel don't usually have so much put in. So this is why when you go to France, you can drink Plonk and not have a headache, but you drink Plonk over here and you get one hell of a whammy. Okay? And this is the person who can drink spirits, but not wines or beers that have got sulfates in. German beer is okay. German beer, they're not allowed to add any chemicals at all. Okay, so if you're going to drink beer, go for German beer, because at least you can guarantee if you're a sulfate-sensitive person. Now, there's one thing that makes sulfite oxidase work, and this is a real trace element called molybdenum. Now, Bob has difficulty in saying this word, don't you, Bob? Molybdenum. Some people just can't get their tongue round it, but molybdenum is a real trace element, and there are 3 known enzymes that use molybdenum. But one of these, which we're really important today, is sulfite oxidase. Because if you can't make sulfate, you then can't make up the sulfate part to make chondroitin sulfate. Okay? So in other words, you dry out. And these people respond very well to sulfates as a supplement. And the most common one is MSM, of course, isn't it, which flooded the market when they've discovered it helped racehorses, who are much more important than humans because there's a lot of money on them. Okay? And then a vet thought, well, if it helps the racehorse, let's see if it will help a human. And there was an element of people with osteoarthritis, the wear and tear in the joint, and that MSM helps. So it's a very good source of sulfur. So we use it as a liquid form of sulfur rather than a dry powder. Now, molybdenum. Okay? Molybdenum is present in lima beans. And lima beans are not the sort of thing you go and eat before you go out drinking. Okay? You don't have a sort of little pile of lima beans. You usually have peanuts or crisps there, but you don't have a pile of lima beans. So somebody who needs this needs the molybdenum, needs the lima beans. Now, who is it? There's one colour who have problems with sulfites and who show to molybdenum. And that's how I know, because all these people show to molybdenum. Therefore, they all have defects. No, it's not. It's reds. It surprised me. It's reds. Reds are not so good. They can drink, but they've got to be very careful which ones they drink. Only reds show to molybdenum. I haven't found a blue or a green strengthening to molybdenum. And I thought afterwards, this is really strange. Why molybdenum? You know, it doesn't come up with anybody else. And I wonder if they're sensitive in the other pathways which are molybdenum dependent, which we may talk about a bit later. But at this stage, it's the reds who've got to watch it. Okay? Now, drinking wine is encouraged. It's very good for reds because it has all those polyphenolics, all those antioxidants. It's a vasodilator. So you need to get some booze into you, okay? But you need at the same time to watch the cheapy plonks, okay, and the heavily, beer in bottles, unless it's from a sulfate-free source, all right? The best source of wine is where? Is the co-op, okay? The co-op is the only place I've seen where they label whether it's got added sulfites in it or not. Okay? And you go to websites and buy it, which is great. But what you otherwise you do is, like Jill and I do, is we go around Waitrose and we muscle test. And we say, the best wine for you is on this shelf. Is he filming this? And it's always other people come up and wonder what you're doing. You sort of muscle test. And eventually you find one. And you found one, or I found one for you, called fish, which was just as well because we had fish last night. But wonderful, you did feel fine today with it. And it was the best wine in Waitrose for you. Okay, mine was a South African one. But it was, it's interesting. Some wines you just can't tolerate. And some wines you can. And I'm not a red now, I'm a green. And I will tell you the story about how colours can change after lunch.
End of chapter 5.